start at 5:45 with a committee appointment, and we'll be moving on. First, with ask the great president.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under announcements, we do have another winter storm moving in, and depending on which weather personality you follow, we're getting anywhere from 12 inches to 22 inches of snow tomorrow. Most of the state government has closed, the York County government has closed, and the Waterboro town offices will be closed tomorrow as well, so that we're sure our employees are safe at home tomorrow and not out on the roads where they don't need to be. So town offices will be closed tomorrow. Yep. Transfer station and the library. I think we'll keep the fire department open though.
Yeah.
At 5:45, we had a committee interview with Jeanette Treadway, and next on the agenda is discuss vote committee appointment.
I move that we appoint Jeanette Treadway to the Finance Committee.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Okay. Also in our packet tonight under committee appointments, we have Frank Allen for the Transfer Station Committee. I think we all know Frank, so I'm not sure we need to set up an interview with him. So what's the pleasure of the board?
I will move to appoint Frank Allen to the Transfer Station Committee. Frank has been involved in the past and was very involved, and I think is pretty knowledgeable in that area.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All right. 6 o'clock, we have the code enforcement officer. You know where Patty is? Okay, thanks. And this is going to be in reference to a consent agreement. Step right up, Patty.
Hey, Patty.
Hi. Where are we at?
You're on.
Okay. Did you get a copy of the draft consent agreement? Hopefully this proposal can be approved. It's mitigated to a point where this violation meets state standards, but not entirely town standards.
Now, there was supposed to be some attachments with this, some sketches.
I have those, and I can make copies for you.
We did not get those.
Do you want to, I can give you this copy right now and then provide them?
Yeah, so we can take a peek at it.
What it is retaining walls are a structure, and according to the zoning ordinance, would not be allowed within 100 feet of the water. The state guidelines allow a 24-inch retaining wall for erosion control purposes, and we just haven't adopted the state mandated guidelines yet.
So this structure is going to be removed,
Yep,
except for the stairwell.
and there'll be vegetation planted where the patio is, because that can't be allowed within 100 feet. They've used up their total 30% expansion.
And you're recommending a $1,000 fine along with the removal.
To cover the costs of the town attorney reviewing this draft and the time that I spent going out there and negotiating this agreement. And that does cover it.
So this is something that they did on their own without a permit, or they had a permit and went beyond it, or what?
They had a permit to expand their camp, but in that permit, they did not include a patio or retaining wall. and they got a final inspection on the camp and then did the patio and retaining wall, saying they didn't realize they needed a permit for that. And
So what is gonna be removed?
Pictures right here.
This right here.
everything but
patio,
24
The
inches
steps will
of
go
the
down, but all this stuff comes
bottom.
out.
And the stairs are gonna stay. We can allow stairs.
And this would all be sloped
Yep.
and planted.
Yep.
Town attorneys reviewed the consent agreement.
Our DEP signed off on this.
Yep, they're in agreement with it, too.
This is not on our agenda tonight to vote on. Are they looking for, we can put this for next week?
Yep, they wanted me to come to the board to propose they'd agree to a $1,000 fine, well, penalty. They didn't really want to, not that I'm speaking for them, but they didn't want to be in the position to not know what to expect, I guess, so. But they did understand it probably wouldn't be on until next week.
Okay.
The amount that you arrived at, is that sufficient to adequately cover the costs?
Yep.
Okay. And all the bills are in for that, all?
I don't think, I went by with what the town attorney gave me for hours that she put in, and I put in like 5 hours of my time. So most of it's attorney.
DEP is not asking for anything?
Okay. Any other questions for Patty? All right, thank you,
Thank
Patty.
you.
We have Tom at 6:30, so do we want to move Tom ahead and do the performance bond now, or do we want to go through the rest of the agenda and come back to it?
Let's go with Tom, he's here.
Yeah, he'll make up the time.
Everybody
Yeah, that's
agreeable
good.
with that?
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Well, if somebody comes in, and you're gonna do it over? If somebody comes in at 6:30 and says,
I'll have selectmen's
yes,
preference.
then
I'd love to,
You can meet
love
with-
to do it twice,
You can meet with them privately in your office.
whatever you say.
He'll still be talking at 6:30.
yeah.
You know me, once I get on a roll, it's hard to slow me down here.
Watch out.
Where is it?
Dave? Excuse me. Good evening, Board, Town Administrator. What I've tried to do is to put a lot of history on one page to compress, to bring everybody on the same page, if you will, about performance bonds. The first thing, look at the timeline. It was about 35 years in the working that the zoning ordinance had the creation, this was brought to my attention by Nancy, the essence of performance bonds was created back in the mid-'70s. Here we are 35 years later, and a lot of things have changed in order to make performance bonding effective both for applicants and effective for the town. What you have to the left of the sheet that I handed out is the exact language that currently is in the zoning ordinance. The construct of that language makes it very difficult, both for your board as well as for the planning board, to effectively do performance bonding the way it was intended to work. Performance bonds are created to offer a guarantee to you, to the public at large, that certain improvements, whether they be through site plan review or through zoning and subdivision, are accomplished. What we've seen happen in the last couple decades is that banks have defaulted, developers have defaulted, and sometimes projects or site improvements don't get completed. And then it becomes a hard decision for your board and the administrator to determine how this work gets completed. So that's the language as it currently stands. It has some problems in grammatical construct. It has some problems in terms of the 6 issues that I've listed. Now, I stand before you as your planner, not as your attorney. So some of these things do have a legal context, so I want to just make that really clear to the public that I'm offering these thoughts so that we can get a good conversation going and come up with some remedies to how we make performance bonding work appropriately and effectively for the town. So if I may, Madam Chair, I was going to go through those 6 points, and then feel free to interrupt me as we go along. The first thing is the dollar requirement in a performance bond typically is set by the municipality so that the planning board has an effective percentage. Typically and realistically and commonsensely, that would be at least 100% of the value of the improvements. The way the performance bond is currently written, it's at 25% of the estimated cost. And I'm not sure how that came to be, but in any case, if you're looking to accomplish site improvements, road infrastructure on a defaulted any type of application or subdivision, 25% obviously will only cover 25% of the estimate. Typically, most municipalities have it at 100 to 125% of value. That's current day value. Which drives point number 4, if I may jump to that, because it's a logical fit. Typically, when estimates are set on performance bonds, you establish an escalator clause, and in that escalator, it helps protect you on long-term projects. Let's say a subdivision went 3 to 5 years, and I think the nature of future subdivisions coming in this town are going to be of a larger size. They're going to be, 20, 25, 30 lots, which may end up being phased projects. Thus, the final improvements don't always get done until the end of the project, particularly the final pavements. Without an escalator clause, I think we enter into a dangerous zone because, again, the estimates done in 2005 are ineffective for 2010 costs, and so on down the line. So escalator clauses, again, are a norm that's typically seen in performance bonding that's used in a community.
Let me ask you, as far as the escalator, you're talking about consumer price index, or you're talking about price of materials?
It can be done in a variety of ways, John, and it's an excellent question. It can be tied to CPI, Consumer Price Index. Probably more importantly, it would be more importantly for the town planner and the consulting engineer and or planning board to revisit long-term projects, let's say projects that are 3 to 5 years out, and revisit it each year. For 2 reasons. One, in fairness to the applicant, because if the applicant has accomplished some of these site improvements, it's only fair to reduce the bond amount. So that's fairness to the private sector. In fairness to the public sector, if certain costs have escalated to do certain improvements, look at where your price of oil is today versus where it was 2 weeks ago. Okay? Oil drives virtually everything. And so then you need to revisit the application. So in answer to that question, John, that kind of ties into number 5 on your list here. There needs to be some sort of internal accountability as to if you wish to do performance bonds. That's probably the biggest question that surrounds all this. Do you want to involve yourself in performance bonding? If you do, then there should be a person that's accountable for logging those projects, logging the time periods, monitoring the project, looking at the deadlines as to when the surety bonds are to expire, alerting the planning board in advance so that the planning board can give an extension of time if necessary. These are all things that should happen in the performance bonding process which don't currently occur. And it's perhaps as simple as having or designating or delegating one person that can take care of that monitoring and logging.
With other municipalities, typically, who in the municipality serves that function?
Depending on the construct of, let's use, in town government, and government this size, it would typically be delegated by the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen to the treasurer because we're handling money. On the other hand, in some cases, planners can also handle that too. It's a simple logging system. It's a simple communication system where people let other people know internally. If it was someone, I'll just use myself as an example, then I would be responsible for keeping a spreadsheet of what those numbers look like, who the developers are, what the bond is, when the expiry date is, backing that up 60 days, alerting the planning board and I alerting you, and then revisiting with the applicant if the fees need to be adjusted, but they can only be adjusted if there's an escalator clause. Okay.
Could that be something, I mean, as simple as, let's say if the town planner kept that information and it was part of, let's say, twice a year, it came up on the planning board agenda, so that was the tickler, that the planner would come into the planning board and make any decision, reducing certain bonds or
Well put, John, and both the planning board and the Board of Selectmen vis-a-vis Nancy. And Nancy and I have a good communication system. All our offices are side by side, so if something comes up, we alert each other to it. So if I see something, and in yours, there may be a piece of software out there, but it's so easy to create that index sheet. It's basically timelines, what form of surety it is, and when the expiry is, and then red flagging it 60 or 90 days in advance. I always like to be 60 or 90 in advance so we can get it on board's agendas. So the logging and reporting system and progress reports, maybe at least twice a year to both of the boards. That's a good way of tickling it. There also needs to be, and you can notice in the current language to your left that's on this sheet, that's currently in your ordinance in section 12, that the default system and defects or lack of maintenance is not really clear. And I believe that we should have legal counsel suggest the appropriate language as to what are these defaults and defects and lack of maintenance. Lack of maintenance factors in the case of, let's say, subdivision approvals might broadly fall into, let me give you an example, cisterns. Is it clear, and help me with this if you know the answer to it, is it clear who maintains cisterns after they're put in? Should it be a private responsibility? Should it be a public responsibility? If it's a private responsibility, the only sensible way of doing it is to do it by a maintenance bond, so that you're guaranteed that that cistern will be taken care of. Someone needs to check cisterns as they age. Because in the worst case scenario, if no one's maintained it, no one's checked it, then we've got a problem. So there's two ways of handling it. The public assumes the responsibility, that being the physical responsibility of checking it, as well as paying for having it checked, or the private sector does.
Now, with some subdivisions that have been done, have there been considerations for cisterns? It seems like I've seen some of them that have gone through where the responsibility for maintaining the cistern falls on an association or whatnot, that the subdivision association. Is that not happening all the time?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm kind of more offering sort of a protective mechanism and consistency so that it's always done, it's either all or none. And what happens in all municipalities, sometimes it gets done and sometimes it doesn't get done. When there's a homeowners association or a condominium association, it's written into the bylaws. The planning board gets a copy of those bylaws, and for the time that I've been working for you, I also review those bylaws. When I see the word cistern, it's sort of a trigger for me to take a look at it. Is there a maintenance provision in the bylaws that takes care of it? In the absence of an association, let's say a plain Jane type of subdivision, a plain vanilla subdivision that just people sell off lots, but there is a cistern in there, who maintains it? Let's say it changes hands and developers or investors. And that's happened, and there's one particular subdivision that's currently being reviewed by the planning board that has changed several investor hands over the last decade. So it needs to be very clear who's assuming that responsibility.
Yeah, along those lines, I mean, time marches on, and 50 to 100 years from now, who maintains it?
Exactly.
Huh?
And then you run into the other issue of what's called responsible principal party, RPPs, responsible principal parties. And was the principal party these last 2 decades? Was it 3 decades back? Or has the original developer of the site gone south, or
Way south.
way south? And so who becomes responsible? Whose responsibility is? And I guess the loop to this is purely clarity. The clearer you make these ordinances, the easier they are to enforce. And we always have to go back to your code enforcement officer too, because this puts a lot of responsibility on her shoulders for reviewing things or enforcing things that need to be done. So I don't miss anything. I just want to go through this list here. 2 other things. Timelines are really critical. If you look at the current language, it's rather vague from start to finish. And is there ever really a finish now that we're talking about maintenance? There are certain things that have to be maintained, and those, again, are typically the cisterns. And lastly, and the reason for the timelines is so that there's benchmarks. And I would envision when the next real estate cycle comes that things are going to come in larger sizes. And both subdivisions and commercial activity. And so we'll want to be really careful as to what the timelines are, what the benchmarks are for review, and then lastly, what form of surety is used. In the past, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, kind of worked on what I call the bohemian principle of banking relationships, where it was pretty easy to get a letter of credit. And the difficulty with letter of credits in today's economy is that you never know if that bank's going to be here or who's going to own that bank next. You could have Bank X owning and being very gracious and offering a letter of credit, and Bank Y coming in, let's say a foreign investment bank come in and buy up another bank and just totally disregard all the letters of credit. So the form of surety needs to be looked at, and there are different vehicles for getting surety. The town would need some sort of guarantee that on a defaulted project, you're able to go back and finish off the job, if you will. Whether it's, otherwise you have, let's say, a 99% built-out subdivision with, in a worst-case scenario, the developer leaving the job site and all of the people on site wanting the rest of the work to get done.
You have some variables here, and how are these worked out? I mean, are they negotiated between the builder and the planning board, or are they set by, let's say, the planning board, the town, and then take it or leave it to the builder? How's that worked out?
How it traditionally works is that almost always the fees aren't negotiated. The reason being is that when a road is estimated out, or the cost of putting in a cistern, the hard and soft costs, when they're all put together, they're typically done by a civil engineer, if it's involving road infrastructure, or even a cistern. So you have some pretty hard costs, and so you wouldn't want to negotiate down, and no one's going to negotiate up. So traditionally, when they come in, the applicant brings with his civil engineer to the planning board and says, Tim, it's going to cost $85,000 to do this over the next 2 years, and we'd like to phase our project. We can get $60,000 worth of these improvements done in year 1, and then we'd like to come back in year 2 and reduce that bond down to $25,000. And so that's how it typically works. The planning board looks at it, looks at the estimate, may or may not ask me and say, Tom, do you think this is fair and reasonable? It may ask for peer review if it's significant. Let's say it's a 7-digit performance bond. They may say, let's get a peer review on this and take a look at it, and then they vote. So it's pretty procedural, and this is one of the few cases where it's relatively non-negotiable. The times might be negotiable and the phasing part, so it's not. We always have to look too on the small business person, so we're not placing a real financial burden on the small business person who is doing a 6-lot or a 5-lot subdivision as to how we phase it and how it's structured.
I think one of the concerns that I had, and Tom and I had this discussion, and kind of with Nancy too, is there was one that came up before the planning board recently where the developer was asking that he not have to put forward any bond. He wanted the 25% waived. And I have issues with that, and that if the work doesn't get done, 25% is certainly not enough, in my opinion, at this point in time, but then to have them say nothing at all, I think is a very dangerous situation for the town to put itself in.
I think we had this long discussion with Ken the night that he came in to talk about impacts and contract zoning and everything else, and I think we covered the whole gamut of bonds, and I mean, there was a lot of dialogue that night about a lot of different things, but the fact of the matter is what we have in our zoning ordinance today is, it's okay, but I know of at least 2 instances where we ended up owning roads and finishing roads that weren't done because the developer bolted, basically. So, we need to somehow strengthen this piece of the zoning.
What would the next step be, Tom?
What I would suggest to the Board of Selectmen is that we have the full planning board take a look at what I've presented to you, and that we sit down and have a conversation with Natalie or Ken. And I think basically for time efficiency and cost efficiency is for myself just to walk through these very same variables, have town council look at the current language, and then make any recommendations back. So we don't end up in a back and forth. It is important to have clarity as to what you want to establish as a percentage. With all respect to the board and all those who believe 25% sometimes may work, it's my opinion it never works. It's impossible to make 25% of 100% value work. And I just think that and I think that's where we've become trapped in sort of an all or none. It's either all or it's none, and in some cases it's been none. And I think for consistency reasons too, the town needs to be consistent in its application of performance bonds. Unless there's a real good reason. There's always reasons to have a waiver. For example, here's a good one. Gordon, if I may. Gordon's a developer. He comes in. He's new to the development business. He has a 4-lot subdivision, okay? And it's expensive for him to go out and get that bond. And so as an alternative to the bond, language, which is required or should be required of everyone, Gordon can always go as a developer and say, how about if I ask the planning board to put a stipulation on the plan that no certificates of occupancy are granted to any of these 4 lots until all of my improvements are done. So that's another possibility, because I think, again, we have to be really fair. The performance bonds were created for the big commercial projects to offer surety. And even commercial projects change hands. As you all recall, at one point, Hannaford Brothers, we'll use them as an example, was a Canadian company, and then it was a North Carolina company, and then I think someone else owns the company now. So,
Great Britain, I think.
in Great Britain. So in commercial or residential projects, things change hands. So the one thing that's absent in here is that if both boards are comfortable with it, is the ability to waiver based on some criteria. And that typically does happen in communities where the building permit or the certificate of occupancy is held.
For expediency, what I'd like to see is you have your 6 points here that need to be changed. I'd like to see if I were on the planning board, here's the present ordinance. Here's how I, at first, the first draft, how I recommend it be changed. And then, if the planning board basically goes along with it, or has some changes that they're looking at, then take it to the attorney. And so rather than kind of going through this, I'd like to see, okay, this is what's wrong with it. I'd like to see the first draft of what the new ordinance is going to look like. And whether you do that, your research from what you know, or whether you get something from another town that's similar to what you think the direction we ought to go to, then they have some stuff to work with immediately.
I still don't get your scenario there and how it protects the people in the town, because even if you say that you're not going to give them an occupancy permit, you're still left with the possibility that this person could go belly up, and now the town has essentially an unfinished subdivision that is out there with nothing, to support its completion.
Or that only happens if you put the waivability clause in, okay? And I was trying to think also of, number 7 should also be the fairness doctrine. How do we apply fairness to everyone? Because, small-scale developers aren't like international developers, okay, in terms of capacities, financial capacities. Securing bonds can be challenging, and in the best-case scenario, people don't secure bonds, they provide saving passbooks. And in those saving passbooks, if the improvements cost $85,000, it's $85,000 in the bank. That's how the work gets done. That's a form of surety that, unless there's a great devaluation of the American dollar, works. That's the guarantee to the public that the improvements get done, is that the surety is not a letter of credit, but it is, in fact, a surety that's real, and it's in the bank.
Based on what we've been discussing, I would be in favor of having the 100% performance bond with the escalator clause in that, because that's the only way that I think that the people in the town are fully protected. And I think if we have that as a standard, and all the developers know that that's a standard that they have to meet, that then becomes simply a cost of doing business. They know up front what they're going to deal with, and if they cannot meet those standards, then I guess they go to some municipality that doesn't have, the protection, or or they, come up with it. But we can't, keep putting the burden on, the taxpayer for, incomplete projects that, that the town essentially has approved and then granted some kind of waiver for.
I have to say, I agree with Gordon. I think that 25% is unacceptable. It has to be 100%, and I think the escalator clause in there makes perfect sense.
And then as far as the internal management, that's probably another discussion that the town administrator and the selectmen can have and determine, who's the appropriate person. It is handling money or some form of surety, so you'd want to use wisdom on that.
I'd say recommend it to us, you can put that down, and we can...
Sort of a sidebar.
It's easy to do that rather than us, 5 of us talking about, should it be this or that? You make a recommendation.
I think it's something that certainly goes to the planning board, and you lay out these 6 steps, or there might be 10 steps in it when all's said and done, and make that proposal, because it's going to have to be a zoning change, and if the management or the record keeping or monitoring is part of the zoning, then so be it, but it should come as a package. This is what it is today, this is what we think it should be, this is how it should be handled. I think it's got to be a total package.
So what I've presented to you is what I've worked with over the last 40 years in terms of performance bonds, and what I saw absent, and how we can remedy that to make it to the public's benefit. There may be pieces missing here, and that's where I think having another set of eyes with the planning board, and then if you all would like to go along with John's idea, which I think is a good one, I'm happy to write. I love to write. I'll write up a draft, and then let the planning board look at it, and they'll have suggestions. They may want to, redline it, make some changes, and then at that point, with the board's and Nancy's permission, we'll proceed ahead with running it by Natalie.
It's a lot faster than, you take this to the planning board or to the board of selectmen and say, let's make a stew, and we debate what meat we're going to use and what vegetables, and you come up with a stew and say, does it need more curry? I said, yes.
It actually, John, would
It
be a
gets done a lot
seafood stew with salmon and halibut with lots of saffron.
Okay.
Just
So,
as long as it's palatable to to everyone.
But if that sounds like an approach, I think, this is step one tonight. And I may have missed something in here, or there may be pieces in here that we need to modify. It's just a starting point, and it's my attempt to kind of compress a lot of ideas on one sheet.
Okay. So I think at least got the head nod from us on where we want to be as far as,
Back to the planning board. Back to the planning board.
all right, very good.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
When do you think we can see some movement on this?
Our next meeting with the planning board is in a couple of weeks. So it'll be on their next agenda, and then I'll ask them to review it. And I would say in March, we can give you a progress report.
Okay. All right, thank you, Tom. Moving on, we have hearing a delegation. We have Representative Aaron Libby with us here this evening. Aaron, did you have anything you wanted to share with us?
Just a few things. First, I will be starting a weekly email list, news and things like that, so if you are interested, please contact me, email. You can either go through the main legislative website and click on one of the links there. District 139 is the Waterboro and then that part of Lyman, so 139 you can look up that way or alphabetically, Aaron Libby. Email, if you want to contact me that way, is rep, R-E-P, Aaron, A-A-R-O-N, .libby, L-I-B-B-Y, at legislator.maine.gov.
Very simple. Very simple, easy.
Yes, it just rolls off the tongue, right? I would like to just let everyone know, in case anyone doesn't know, on Monday, on the 7th, next Monday, will be the red audit tape in Sanford. I believe that's the town hall. Just we'd like to encourage people to go and see what's going on. It's one of the 25 or so joint committee on regulatory finance and reform, or also known as the red tape audit. So.
Do you know what time that is?
That'd be 3 to 6, sorry, 3 to 6 on Monday the 7th. And that's in Sanford. I believe it's at the town hall, but I have to double check that. But the House calendar's been really light. Basically just referrals, bills. Basically you just kind of sit there and the bills go to this committee, that committee. Does anyone have any opposing? And that's been it. So it's been kind of light so far. Bills are just starting to get to committees. Our first, for my committee, the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee, the first bill that we're going to be, public hearing that we have is tomorrow, which has already just been canceled, so we haven't really done much. Just it's been a lot of orientations. We took a trip down to the ISO in New England, down in Hoyok, Massachusetts, so just getting a feel for the energy tech, the vocabulary, and then kind of just seeing the inner parts of it. So like I said, other than that, it's been pretty light. So, any questions?
Yeah, one.
Sure.
I don't know why people think that I could possibly have anything to do with that as a selectman, but I've heard some comments, and then you can read in the blogs and in the newspaper, is, with so many pressing issues that the state of Maine has in terms of economy, where I'm going.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
With,
Not a problem.
with job creation and taxes and, the school thing. Why are they debating at length whether or not we should have the whoopie pie as the
State dessert, yes.
state dessert?
I prefer blueberry pie myself.
That's been a big sidebar to it, what it actually should be. I mean, Mass has a state dessert. I mean, many other states do have it. We have Moxie's, our state soda. Yeah, I mean, I didn't co-sponsor on that bill. To me, it's insignificant if you want to put it down to that level. Like I said, there is precedent issues. But, on the other hand, I would say, especially in the past, that the legislators have done a lot of things that I would call negative. So maybe if the worst thing they're doing is making the whoopie pie the state dessert, well, at least that's not infringing on people's taxes as much. I understand there is a cost involvement, but I think it definitely got some legs in the media, and I haven't seen any hard debate. It's been a few laughs, but there was a representative that spoke on at the House level floor, which consisted about a 40-second
Big article on
speech.
the
But
front page.
yes, yeah, it did
I
definitely
mean,
got a lot of publicity. But
It's non-partisan too.
Okay, whoopie pies and blueberry pies aside, anything else for Aaron?
I just wanted a lighter moment. That's all.
it is. Hey, the whoopie. I don't know what. Maybe that will be.
You would probably prefer apple pie.
Apple or blueberry. Yeah, both.
That's right.
Either, yeah, I got both, so either one's fine with me. So.
There, or at least
But then again, we get the
voting,
pumpkin whoopie pie too, so that pulls that in. So I guess can find a connection to both. But I did put in the House floor the ice fishing derby, so the whole state can know about it and all come. I don't know if they'll have parking for that, but hopefully get a little bit of publicity for it. So
Okay,
other
great.
than that, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Okay, moving on, under correspondence, we had 3 different correspondence this week from the Planning Board. All 3 are recommendations regarding the Wellhead Protection District, the zoning change submitted by Mike Allen, and the medical marijuana ordinance. We have them all in our packets, and we will have them on our agenda for next week. So we've all got time to look those over this week. Did the planning board want to have any input? You're here, you came out on this nice snowy night. Did you want to, regarding the correspondence, did you want to share anything with us?
No, I think it's probably over there.
Yep. Okay. Tom?
The one thing that did come up, and I just for clarification, on the proposed wellhead protection district, there were many questions raised, there were many questions unanswered, but one of the consensuses was that I send a letter to Natalie addressing some of the major concerns that were aired. And so I've sat down with Patty, and I'm going to talk with her again on Thursday and send off an initial letter to Natalie, because there's a lot of different legal unanswered questions that are in this proposed ordinance. And some of the things that will be in that letter will deal with inspections, monitoring, violations, enforceability. In those particular subsections, they need to be really specific, because it puts a lot of responsibility on your code enforcement officer if there is an accident. The other huge issue that needs to be really thought through carefully is who is fiscally responsible. Who's fiscally responsible for monitoring? Is it the town? Is it the district? Is it both of you? What happens is, when there's accidents, usually the accidents involve a lot of money. I've worked on 3 Superfund sites, and sometimes it's something as small as a 2-gallon container of turpentine dumped in the wrong location. And so there are these huge issues that are relatively unanswered in terms of fiscal responsibility. And so the construct of that ordinance, if it gets to the point of being voted on at board level or town level, those questions need surgically precise clarity.
I was at the meeting the other night, and there's a lot of language in that ordinance that really leaves, I think, the town on the hook for administering something that the water district needs to protect their wells. So I understand that it's perceived as an asset from the municipality, or for the municipality, from a business drawer and those kind of things, but there's some real concern with how this sorts out. So,
It says in the letter that it's tabled until there's a workshop with the water district. Is that something that's scheduled?
well, they had part of that the other night after the meeting adjourned was a workshop.
That's,
With the water district?
Yeah, needs some work.
There was a workshop, a lot of questions were surfaced that didn't have answers, and correct me if I'm wrong, the planning board had asked me to draft up a letter, and I decided that I really needed to talk with Patty too, because many of these things fall on her shoulders in terms of enforceability. Let me use what might be a rather insignificant, it's a case that I had worked on about a decade ago, where there was a problem in the water supply, and as part of the investigation, the code enforcement officer didn't have a doctorate in toxicology. And so several toxicologists had to be retained at $500 an hour. And so a lot of research, monitoring, placement of monitoring wells, laboratory testing, just having scientists come up from Cambridge, easily got into 6-digit costs rather fast. And so these are questions that come up, and it's always the worst case scenario that you have to prepare for. After all, it's wellhead protection. And so when there's a discovery, one, you have to validate, is this true or is this not true? Is this a minor spill or a major spill? And then you have to get into all that evidence and gathering, and it gets complicated and it gets very expensive. And as the planning board and I look at this ordinance, we see some gaps in there as to the fiscal accountability. And sometimes in the lack of that definition of accountability, because the enforcement falls on the town of Waterboro, then there's an assumption that costs are borne by the town of Waterboro.
So I'd say that there's really no action for the board to take on this at this point until the planning board has some more definitive recommendations.
Even the recommendation changes to the zoning ordinance were presented by the water district, which even gets a little bit funkier, because, the water district is saying, hey, we need this to protect the water recharge areas, right? In a new, if something new was coming along, you'd take the provisions to say, no, you can't put it there, or you got to do this, or you got to do that. It's all of those properties that exist today, that if something happens, who's responsible to go poke at it? And certainly, the proposed changes to the zoning ordinance just said the code officer, right? And there's no tie to any sort of an agreement with the town of Waterboro, so there's got to be some work done.
So we don't need to.
Well, thank you for letting me
Put
share
that
that with
aside.
you. It's just that, I just wanted to alert you that the planning board's attentive to that.
Okay. How about, while you're there, Tom, before you run away, we had the recommendation for the zoning change on Route 5. I'm glad Mike walked back in. That was reviewed, and they've recommended that that be passed, but it also says in this that they're going to be having a workshop to make further recommendations, looking at that area as a whole. Is that something that's already scheduled to happen?
I'd have to talk with Tina. I'm glad you brought it up. I think we should put it on the board's agenda for the 16th, not even wait for a workshop, just put it on their regular
Okay.
meeting and just tackle it.
Because I think one of the things that we talked about as a board when this came up was that we wanted to do this all in one fell swoop rather than piecing it. And I know that the planning board had to look at it based on Mike's request, and they had to look at that and act on that first, and they've done that, and they've made that recommendation. But I don't know that we're interested in looking at it until it's a whole package.
I just don't see them doing that in a timely fashion. Nothing against the planning board. I just think that they've got a bunch of things going. They intend to look at it, but I'm not sure we can hold Mike hostage with approving what they've recommended to approve and what he's requested for in his individual request.
Yeah, I feel it
So,
should be separate.
I think we need to address that, and it would have been nice had we put it all together, but again, planning board has some work to do, and that may not happen in the next 2 weeks or the next 2 months. And again, I'm not trying to take a shot at the planning board, other than the fact that there's a whole host of things that they've got going on. We've had a request, and again, it would have been nice to put it all together, but I think now we've got a recommendation from the planning board to go ahead and approve the requested zoning change, and we need to address that as a board here. And for one, I just don't see that we're going to get the rest of it in a timely manner. And I say timely, I would think that certainly Mike has now been, a couple of months working this thing, so I think we need to put it on the next week's agenda or whatever, vote on it. Whatever the process is now, so.
You have a comment? Nope, David?
Me?
Yep.
I was just going to say the same thing. It obviously needs to be done, and it's wide open for it, but we didn't want to hold Mike up waiting for the whole process.
All right, so we'll have that on next week then, Mike. Actually, planning, public notice is 2 weeks, Nancy, for a public hearing. So, we'll be like 3 weeks. Because you're not going to, town hall's closed tomorrow, so we're not going to be able to get posting tomorrow. So the 22nd? Is that about right? So the 22nd. Okay.
So we could have the public hearing and vote on it that night?
Yep.
Does that work for you?
And then the other one is the medical marijuana ordinance, and there's some recommendations here from the planning board on language to add to the existing Article 14, adding definitions and appropriate subsections of Article 3. Has this had legal review yet?
In this particular case, it has not, and the reason it has not is that when I did my research, I was making an effort to save the town some legal money, and I went to municipalities that had their legal counsel or legal firms review what they had adopted. It's the case, for example, in the city of Augusta. So those host communities for medical marijuana dispensaries, they all went through the process before we did. So what I gathered up was what was used in other municipalities for dispensaries, and then I customized it to fit our needs, and in some cases added the word methadone clinics too, because I think you haven't seen the end of these types of facilities starting to mushroom throughout the state, and so there are other types of dispensaries that have been tried. Gordon certainly is aware of the multitude of attempts for methadone clinics in the town of Sanford. And so you can have similar type language. So what we did is a little bit of grouping there, and additionally we defined more precisely which arterials, obviously 5 and 202, that these could be located on. So we did some cross-referencing and embellished what we had received from other communities from my research. It's not to say that if you feel you'd like to have council take a quick look at it, they may add some embellishment.
The additions that the planning board made, are those additions similar to what other municipalities have done that have already been through the legal review process, or are they something that's new or specific to us that we may need to just have those items looked at?
Some communities have just kept it simply as medical marijuana dispensaries or facilities and not put methadone clinics grouped with it. So Biddeford did it slightly different than Augusta. And the reason for that is that some of the bigger cities have specific medical zones or medical zones that are on Interstate 95. So they had a different rationale for just having one type of facility. For example, like in Biddeford, I believe, the methadone clinics can only be put in their industrial zone. So, I mean,
I would think if we took the base document, and that's already been through legal review, that it would have been fine, but because there's been changes made by the planning board here locally, I would think that we'd want to be on firm footing and have that looked at by the town attorney. It shouldn't take them as long, because
pretty brief.
it's certainly not a,
it's pretty simple.
yeah.
So we would have to have a public hearing on that as well, correct, Nancy?
Well, if it's not going to get posted until next week, then Natalie's got time to look at it before we post it.
Yep. And if we could, do it all at the same,
On the same night.
yep, have both of those on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Nancy, are you going to send that off to Natalie, or did you want me to?
Why don't you go ahead and do it?
Okay.
We got it all.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
All right. I think that's it, Tom.
I think so. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to reports, town administrators report.
Just make a note of this, I don't forget. I wanted to add one more thing that was going to be closed tomorrow. Mike's closed the Funergy camp also, so that will be closed. We're still in the midst of the budgets, holding different workshops, meeting with department heads. And I do want to say that we have a new town clerk. She will be starting next Tuesday. Her name is Yvette Murray. She's from Minot, Maine. She's worked as a deputy town clerk. She is a certified town clerk, and she works a trio. She's done motor vehicles. She has experience in everything that we need. So I would like to have her come in next Tuesday night during the selectmen's meeting so that everybody can put a face to the name.
Good.
That'd be okay to have her?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Anything else, Nance?
That's it.
Okay. Selectmen's reports?
I guess I'd be looking to have this put on next week's agenda, and that's the self-evaluation scale for boards and committees. I have gotten back a response from the Finance Committee, the 4 people there, and just kind of give you an idea of what
It's on
the...
tonight's agenda,
Excuse me?
We do have that under old business tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'll defer what I was going to say to Lowell Business.
Does the, underneath the committee reports, is the road commissioner or road review going to come in?
No.
No, okay. Well, at the last road review meeting, I asked Fred what the status was of Mass Camp Road. He said it would not be started until this spring. So.
Okay. Anything else from selectmen?
Just visit with the planning board, but we kind of already discussed that. They still need, what, one or two members, right? Planning board, we need to fill that board up. So, anybody that's interested or knows of anybody, we ought to start to see if we can get that done.
I think there may be somebody that's possibly interested in that. That's the gentleman that has the development that was just approved.
Just remember that names for committees are treated the same as job applications, they're confidential.
Okay. There may be somebody that's interested.
Yes.
Okay, and I attended the 12-town group meeting, actually, it's been a few weeks now, and the Budget Committee, they reported on the county budget. The Budget Committee did pass a budget. It was $9 less than last year's budget. It was going to be sent to it'll next go to the commissioners for approval. If the commissioners have any recommendations for changes, then they'll send it back to the Budget Committee, where they may or may not make changes. Some other concerns that were raised, apparently, and Aaron, maybe you can answer this, there was some concern that perhaps a bill has been put forward to abolish the York County Budget Committee and have the budget set by the county commissioners. John Sylvester was going to look into that and hopefully report on that at the next meeting. But certainly if that's a bill that's going to be put forward, then John is asking for involvement from the 12-town group, especially when it comes times for hearings in Augusta, to get selectmen, town administrators, and whatnot involved in that process and at some of those hearings. So I don't know if that's a bill you heard anything about, or
I
maybe
haven't heard much about it, no.
something to be interested in. One of the other things that was brought up about the budget was the budget that was passed last year. After the budget was passed, the county commissioners went in and took additional monies out of surplus that were not voted on in the budget and used part of those funds to give themselves a raise that the Budget Committee did not approve. So the question was, why are the county commissioners allowed to go beyond the scope of the budget that was set? And the answer I got was that it would take the municipalities banding together and hiring an attorney to look at the legalities of that. So that's what came out of the 12-town group. We talked still a little bit more about the road issue. That's been an ongoing conversation that we've had. And that was about it out of that meeting. And then also, if anybody tuned in last Tuesday night looking for the Selectmen's meeting, we met with the RSU 57 superintendent. We're going to have a conversation about that a little bit later in the agenda, but it was a meeting between the communities that are serviced by RSU 57. For committee reports, we have the Cable TV Board, and we've got an email from Dick Bateman, who wasn't able to be with us this evening, but what he had to say is the current status concerning the cable TV franchise renewal with Time Warner Cable, the request for proposal, one for each of the 6 towns, including Waterboro, in the Saco River Cable TV franchise area. It's expired. There's a request for proposal, but with several renewals going on at the same time, it might be sometimes in January before we get a response from them. It's not January anymore. But the 3-month renewal of the contract franchise ran out on December 31st, and a new 3-month request will be forthcoming. Cable Saco River Community TV Board. David, did you want to report on that?
Sure.
We're going to make you come to the podium.
Also representing the coalition against whoopie pies for Waterboro.
I just hope there's not a food fight
Keep those
between
guys
the
busy
blueberry
working on
pies and
whoopie
whoopie
pies
pies.
up there. We really need an ordinance against whoopie pies here before it gets out of control. A couple of reminders. We've been having some audio issues. I'm Dave Lowe, Waterboro IT, Saco River, Community TV Board of Directors representing Waterboro. We've been having some issues with certain parts of town with the signal, audio, video, one or both, I guess. If anybody's having any problems with that, call Time Warner Cable TV or preferably call Saco River Community TV because they'd like to know about that as well. And they'll get the message on to Time Warner. Their number is 727-5702, 727-5702, and let them know what area of town you're in and what problems you're having so they can continue working on that. A reminder that these meetings, selectmen meetings, planning board meetings, zoning board meetings are online now. You can find those on the town website under videos. They're on Vimeo, or you can go to Saco River TV. That's SRC-TV.org. There's about 400 meetings up between all of the towns in the Saco River area. Another thing that we'd like to remind residents that Saco River Community TV is there for everybody, all residents of the town. They're looking for people who would like to make their own show, whatever your interest might be. They will take you from A to Z, from training on cameras to editing programs to right up to getting it on TV, on the internet. They even have a projector they'll lend you if you want to go broadcast it someplace and show your home movies and whatever the case may be. But definitely take advantage of that. They have a studio available, a couple of very helpful and knowledgeable guys up there that are willing to work, and they're eager to help. There is for instance, there's a Waterboro resident, I believe his name's Dan Albert, who's taping Massabesic varsity hockey, and that's showing every day on cable access channel 2 at 4:30. They're willing to do political interviews, political ads, that type of thing, you know, for those coming up for re-election or looking to get involved with politics locally or in the state, representing this area. There's about 8,500 subscribers, so it's a fairly decent viewing audience around here. And what else? Get my big pad here. There are a couple of things they're working on up there is upgrades to the system to do what they can to enhance the signal, also to do some server upgrades and whatnot to get, they're really looking toward getting the streaming going out of there. We're working on streaming our video here live with mediocre success, but if they're able to get it going straight from the studio, it's going to be much better for us all. So those are some of the things going on there. So definitely call Saco River TV. Visit their website, src-tv.org.
Any questions
Okay.
for David? Thanks.
And join the Whoopie Pie, Anti-Whoopie Pie Coalition.
On that note, I assume one tidbit that just remembered. I thought it was kind of eye-raising as well. The idea that there's actually over 400 businesses in the state of Maine that their sole money income source is whoopie pies. So I thought that was actually kind of, I didn't think of that, but that's 400 businesses that are really loving the advertisement probably right now. So that's all I have.
And we're doing our part.